ಸಂಸಾರದವನ್ನವಲಿದಲೋಕ ತ್ರಾಣಾಯ ಕಾರುಣ್ಯ ಗಣ ಗಣತ್ವಂ
ಸಂಸಾರದವನ್ನವಲಿದಲೋಕ ತ್ರಾಣಾಯ ಕಾರುಣ್ಯ ಗಣ ಗಣತ್ವಂ
ಪ್ರಾಪ್ತಸ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಗುಣರ್ನವಸ್ಯ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಪ್ರಾಪ್ತಸ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಗುಣರ್ನವಸ್ಯ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಮಹಾಪ್ರಭೋ ಕೀರ್ತನ ನಿತ್ಯ ಗೀತಾ ವಾದಿತ್ರಮಾದ್ಯಾನ್ ಮನಸೋರಸೇನ
ಮಹಾಪ್ರಭು ಕೀರ್ತನ ನಿತ್ಯ ಗೀತಾ ವಾದಿತ್ರಮಾದ್ಯಾನ್ ಮನಸೋರಸೇನ
ರೋಮಾಂಚಕಾಂ ಪಾಶ್ರುತರಂಗಬಾಜೋ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ರೋಮಾಂಚಕಂ ಪಾಶ್ರು ತರಂಗಬಾಜೋ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಶ್ರೀ ವಿಗ್ರಹಾರಾಧನ ನಿತ್ಯನಾನಾ ಸಿಂಗಾರತಾನ್ಮಂದಿರಮರ್ಜನಾದೋ
ಶ್ರೀ ವಿಗ್ರಹಾರಾಧನ ನಿತ್ಯನಾನ ಶೃಂಗರತನ ಮಂದಿರ ಮದನಾದೋ
ಯುಕ್ತಸ್ಯ ಭಕ್ತಾಂ ಚ ನಿಯುಂಜತೋಪಿ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಯುಕ್ತಸ್ಯ ಭಕ್ತಂಸ್ಯ ನಿಯುಂಜತೋಪಿ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
ಚತುರ್ವಿಧಾ ಶ್ರೀ ಭಗವತ್ಪ್ರಸಾದ ಸ್ವಾದಾನ್ನ ತೃಪ್ತಾನ್ ಹರಿಭಕ್ತ ಸಂಗಾನ್
ಚತುರ್ವಿಧ ಶ್ರೀ ಭಗವತ್ ಪ್ರಸಾದ ಸಾತ್ಮನ ತೃಪ್ತಾನ್ ಹರಿಭಕ್ತ ಸಂಗ
ಕ್ರೀತೈವ ತೃಪ್ತಿಂ ಭಜತ ಸದೈವ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं
ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं
ಶ್ರೀ ರಾಧಿಕಾ ಮಾಧವಯೋ ಅಪಾರ ಮಾಧುರ್ಯ ಲೀಲಾ ಗುಣರೂಪ ನಾಮ್ನಾ
श्री राधिका माधवयरपार मधुरलीला गुणरूपना
ಪ್ರಾತಿಕ್ಷಣಾ ಸ್ವಾದನಲೋಲುಪಾಸ್ಯ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣರವಿಂದಂ
प्रातिक्षण साधनललुपास वन्दे गुरो श्री चरणरविन्दं
ನಿಕುಂಜಯೋ ನೋ ರತಿ ಕೇಳಿಸಿದೈ यया लिबे युक्तिरपेक्षणीया
निकुञ्जयो न रतिकरे सिद्धै जयलिबे युक्तिरपेक्षणीया
तत्रात्यक्षाया रतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
पात्रातिदक्षरतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
साक्षादर्तिवेन्द समस्तशास्त्रे उत्कास्तता भाव्यत एव साद्भिः
समस्तशास्त्रे उदास्तथा भाव्यत एव साद्भिः
किन्तु प्रभूय प्रियैव दास्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
किन्तु प्रबोध प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान्न गति कुतोऽपि
यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसादान्न गति कुतोऽपि
ध्यायान् सुवासन्तस्य यशस्त्रीसान्ध्यं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
ध्यायां स्तुवं तस्य यशस्त्रीसान्ध्यं वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम् 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 वन्दे गुरु श्रीचरणरविन्दम्
नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने
नमः कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौरभक्तवृन्द
जय श्री कृष्ण
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Vishwapara Paramhansa Prabhajaka Stutara Sarashishimadhi Iskon Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Sramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patitta Pavana. His Divine Grace Abhacharananda Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhara Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Guna Sadgoswami Swami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Nanta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Prem Si Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gauru Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Paramadayavasi Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Premanama Sankirtanika Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Satchinandana Shman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gauru Hari Mavranaya Avatar Ki Jai, Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai, Jugadharma Hare Krishna Mantra Ki Jai. Brihat Midanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopakupina Radha Kund Syama Kund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathurdham Ki Jai, Dear Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Navadip Eka Chakradham Ki Jai, Param Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu, Srimati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai, Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karna Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai, Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Brindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Bolo Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai, Shamaveta Bhakta Brindi Ki Jai, Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glories to the assembly body, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya,
Namaste Narasimhaya,
Namaste Narasimhaya,
Namaste Narasimhaya,
Pralada Lada Daine,
Pralada
Hiranyakashapurvaksha,
Hiranyakashipu Vaksha,
Shilatankanakalaye,
Kaya Silatangka Nakalaye,
Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha,
Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingha,
ततो नरसिंहा
Jaya Jata Jata Jami Tata Nrsimha
बाहेर नरसिंहा हृदये नरसिंहा
Vayir Nrsimha Hrudaye Nrsimha
नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये
Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapade
तव करकमलवरे नाकाम् अद्भुत शृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
Abakara Kamala Bare Nakam Adabhuta Singha Dalita Iranakasipu Tanobringa Keshavarita Nararirupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re
जय केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
Kesavadeta Nararirupa Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re Jai Jagadisa Re
जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव
Jaya Nrsimha Re Jaya Nrsimha Re Nrsimha Re Jaya Nrsimha Re
जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय भक्त प्रहलाद
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
Jai Jai Gurudev 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 Jai Jai Gurudev
नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल
Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Hari
नरसिम्हदेव भगवान की
Jai
प्रहलाद महाराज की
Jai Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Keshava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatai Namo Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Keshava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatai Namo Vrindayai Tulasi Devai प्रिय के सब सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदेवे सत्यवत नमो नमः। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। तुलसी
कृष्ण प्रेयसी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो एई अभिलाषी।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो एई अभिलाषी।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो
ये तोमार शरण लोय तारा वंच पूर्ण होय। कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन बासी।
कृपा करे कर तारे वृंदावन वासी।
मोरा ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास।
मोरा ये विलास कुंज
नयने हेरी बो सदा युगल रूपरासी। हे निवेदन दारो सगीरनुगाता को सेवाधिकार दिए कोरो निज दासी। दीना कृष्ण दासे को ये न मोरा होई। दीना कृष्ण दासे को ये न मोरा होई। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये न बासी। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये न बासी। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi, Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi.
निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai
गौर
Gaur
हरि
Hari Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priyai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatai Namo Namah. Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priyai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatai Namo Namah. Vrindaye Tulasi Devaye Priyaye Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavatai Namo Namah. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. I desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire that you also grant me a resident of as within my vision, I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavita, Mrs. of Raj. Please give me the privilege to go for service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always sing in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. So let's remember the 10 offenses against the chanting of the holy name that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1, to blaspheme the devotees who dedicate a life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2, to consider names of demigods and Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4, to blaspheme the very scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5, to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6, to give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7, to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8, to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9, to instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10, to not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even if understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Vancha Kalpatarubhyacha Kripa Sindhudevacha Paritanam Bhavaneyo Vaishnavi. Jai Ananta Kuch Vaishnavrind Ki Jai. Food truckers. Late, by 9 o'clock. Maybe tomorrow. WC. Very good. Jai. Shikastakam ki jai. Cheto darpanamajanam bhavamahadavagni nivapanam Sheyakariva chandrika vitaranam vidyavadhu jivanam Anandam Vidivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Shradanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamittashmarane Nakala Etadrishi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idrishamiya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadina Kirtanya Sada Hari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Bhajagarishaka Mahi Mama Janmani Janmani Shari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahaitu Kitvai Ainandatanuja Kinkaram Patitamam Vishame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stita Dhuli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shudharaya Vadanam Gadagarudhaya Gira Purakayin Chitam Vapukana Tavanamagrahane Bhavisyati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakyusha Pravusaitam Sunyaitam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahinam Aslishava Padaratam Pinastumam Adarshanar Marmahatam Karotuva Jathatatava Vidadhatulam Pato Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikkhyastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namini Gaur Krishnava. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vinanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunnavadi Pasatyadi Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire conditioned life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because its praise raised the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lowered and strolling in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somewhere or other I'm fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at the heel of the street. O my Lord, when will my eyes with decorative tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up and will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and should remain so. If he sunders me rightfully by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything for his my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranam Mangala Charan Ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakchurun Militam Jena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Jyotapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamitam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padayo Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Srinavadi Pachatyari Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padayo Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhana Videvi Deitaya Kripabdvaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Nama Madhurjo Jala Primadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravane Shri Murtaye Natarine Rupanuga Viruddha Posidanta Dvantarine Namagora Kishoraya Sakchavera Gyamurtaye Vipralambhara Sambhode Parambhujayate Nama Namo Bhakti Vinauraya Sakchit Ananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhumetsvam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannatayate Nama Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyevacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namo Panchatattamakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhakta Avataro Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jaitam Suratupangur Mama Mandamatir Gatir Masarvasya Parambojo Radha Madana Mohanu Divya Vindaranya Kalpadumadha Shmaranagara Shingasanastu Shmaradha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtalivi Shivamanu Shmarami Shmara Sarasarambi Bamshvata Tatastita Karshan Venu Swanar Gopir Gopinata Shri Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rusavano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Guru Pranam Mangala Charan Ki Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam Prantaraja Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Naman. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Satarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam Prantaraja Ki Jai, Canto 3, Chapter 8, verse number 10. Buddha Prutam Vishwam Idam Tadasid Yadnidraya Nidrayam Irlita Drin Niyamilayat Ahindra Talpe Disargana Eka Kritakshana Swatmarato Niriha. Uda, water. Aplutam, submerged in. Vishwam, the three worlds. Idam, this. Tada, at that time. Asit, it so remained. Yat, in which. Nidraya, in slumber. Amilita, closed. Drik, eyes. Niyam milayat, not completely closed. Ahi, Indra, the great snake Ananta. Talpe, on the bed of. Adis Ayana, lying on. Eka, alone. Krita, Shana, being engaged. Swaatma Rato, enjoying in his internal potency. Niriha, without any part of external energy. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. At that time, when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta. And although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. At that time when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta. And although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Well, that's a very significant point, because when yogis are supposed to meditate, their eyes are half closed, half open. If they close their eyes all the way, they'll go to sleep. If they keep their eyes completely open, they'll be distracted. So they have to have their eyes not completely closed and not completely open. Now, you try and do that. You can see it's not that you close your eyes when you meditate. That's not yoga. Or you keep your eyes open when you meditate. That's not yoga either. you have to have half-closed eyes. And therefore, the Garbhodaksha Vishnu was meditating. He was not sleeping. And that meditation, that type of meditation is very difficult because you never really close your eyes and you never really keep them completely open. So it says here, the Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of cosmic manifestation. Okay, well, that's a fact. The material world is sometimes manifest and sometimes not manifest. But Krishna is eternally enjoying his transcendental pastimes in the spiritual world, unfazed or not in any way influenced by what's going on in the material worlds. And there's not only one material world or one material universe, there's billions of them. And he's maintaining all those things, but he's not affected by them. So this is very difficult to understand for a mundane person. It's difficult for devotees to understand, but if they regularly come to class and listen carefully of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, they can begin to understand and eventually understand up to 78% of who Krishna is. That is our limit as far as jivas. Brahma is a jiva like us. So he doesn't know everything about Krishna, but he knows a lot. And we can also come up gradually to such a position as Brahma. Okay, so we'll go on to the next verse, and then I'm going to talk about something very special. Text 11. Sonata sarire ripita bhuta shukshma kalatmikam saktim udirayana uvasa tasmin salile padesve yatana lodaruni rudravirya sa, the Supreme Lord, anta, within, sarire, in the transcendental body, arpita, kept, bhuta, material elements, shukshma, subtle, kala atmikam, the form of time, shaktim, energy, udirayana, invigorating, uvasa, resided, tasmin, therein, salile, in the water, pade, in the place, sve, his own, yata, as much as, anala, fire, daruni, in the fuel wood, ruda virya, submerged strength. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. After the three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems merged into the water of dissolution, the living entities of all the three worlds remained in their subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed, just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as in the case in the full dissolution of the material world. So now we see that there are different types of dissolution of the material energy. There are partial dissolutions and there's complete dissolution. So at the end of every Manu, sometimes there's a partial type of dissolution. And at the end of the day of Brahma, there's a partial dissolution. And at the end of the life of Brahma, there's complete dissolution, or in other words, winding up of the material energy. Okay, so just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. Okay, so we'll go to the next verse, and then I'm going to talk about something special. Text 12. Chaturyuganam cha sahasram apsu
Chaturyuganam cha sahasram apsu
swapan svayodiritaya swasakya
swapan svayodirataya swasakya
kala kayaya sadita karma tantro
kala kayaya saditita karma tantro
lokan apitan dadrise swadehe.
lokan apitan dadrise swadehe.
Chatu, 4. Yuganam, of the millenniums. Cha, also. Sahasram, 1,000. Apsu, in the water. Swapan, dreaming and sleep. Swaya, with his internal potency. Udiritaya, for further development. Swasaktya, by his own energy. Kala Kayaya, by the name Kala.
By the name Kala.
Asadita,
Asadita.
being so engaged.
Being so engaged.
Karma Tantra,
Karma tantra.
in the matter of fruitive activities.
In the matter of fruitive activities.
Lokan,
Lokan.
the total living entities.
The total living entities.
Apitan,
Pitan.
bluish.
Bluish.
Dadrise,
Dadrise.
so it so.
Swadehe.
Swadehe,
Swadehe.
in his own body. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord laid down for 4,000 yuga cycles. That's a really long time. In his internal potency. And by his external energy, he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the Vishnu Purana, Kala Shakti is mentioned as avidya, or ignorance. The symptom of the influence of the Kala Shakti is that one has to work in the material world for fruitive results. Well, that's everybody, even our devotees. The fruitive workers are described in Bhagavad Gita as mudas, or foolish. Such foolish living entities are very enthusiastic to work for some temporary benefit within perpetual bondage. One thinks himself very clever throughout his life if he is able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children, and to achieve this temporary benefit, he takes the risk of all sinful activities without knowledge that such activities will keep him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage. Due to this polluted mentality and due to material sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appeared to be bluish. Such an impetus of activity for fruitive results is made possible by the dictation of the external energy of the Lord, Kala. Okay, this is a very powerful statement here. Let me read the translation again. The Lord laid down for 4,000 yuga cycles in his internal potency, and by his external energy, he appeared to be sleeping within the water when the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. So Kala Shakti is the time factor. And the time factor is what makes things move. And the time factor is Krishna. Or Krishna is the time factor also. So, as soon as people start moving, almost all of them are moving for fruitive results. Now, what does that mean? Fruitive is not an English word. Fruit is an English word. Fruitive is a word that Prabhupada coined because he didn't find any other English word that could translate the concept of, let's call it, self-interested or selfishly interested goals of people. So he coined the word fruitive. Now it might be in a dictionary now because he uses it so much. You want to look it up and see if Fruitive, fruitive. The word fruit.
It's there.
Huh? It's there?
Fruitive,
Is
yes.
it there? What's it say?
The meaning of fruit is enjoying, possessing.
No, say it in my.
The meaning of fruitive is enjoying and possessing.
Okay, now look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary. It could possibly not be there. It used to not be in the regular American dictionaries like Merriam-Webster. Look up Oxford Dictionary.
Able to produce fruit.
Oh, they have it also? Well, you can see how influential Prabhupada has become. You know, he's coining words and they're accepting it, whereas before it wasn't there. Okay, so when we work for fruitive results, we become entangled by the laws of material nature or karma. And therefore, as long as we have that profit incentive in our mind and in our activities, we remain in the material world in the cycle of birth and death. Now someone would say, well, what do you want us all to be poor? No, that's not the point. But working only for a selfish aggrandizement, that's a nice word, aggrandizement, will keep you in the material world. When you understand that Krishna conscious life is a life that's described as a minimalist life, where you accept only the bare necessities and everything above that you use in the service of Krishna. Now, most people are not willing to do that. That's why they go on birth after birth in different bodies, sometimes animal bodies, sometimes lower than that. And it takes a long time to come back to the human body. Just take a look. There are partial dissolutions and complete dissolution of the material nature. Well, it lasted 4,000 yuga cycles. A yuga cycle is what? It's the four steps. Like you have Sattva Yuga, Sattva, and Treta and Dwapara and Kali. So that's 4,300,000 years. And now you have to multiply that by what? 4,000? Look how long. A partial dissolution lasts. What about the complete dissolution at the end of Brahma's lifetime? So these are huge periods of time. So if we misuse the human form of life, we get caught in this vicious cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease for hundreds and billions of years before we may be able to come back to the human form of life to get another chance to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So it's one of the worst things, or it is the worst thing a human being can do, is wasting even 1 second of their lifetime on nonsense things and just thinking about making money and so forth. Yeah, if you're married, you have to have some money, so you should have an honest job, but you shouldn't be so, let's say, overstressed by the job that you have no time for Krishna consciousness. Then you become what's called a karmi. You're just making karma that's going to keep you in the material world for billions and billions of years. Okay, so it says here, one thinks himself very clever throughout his life if he's able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children, and to achieve this temporary benefit, he takes the risk of all sinful activities without knowledge that such activities will keep him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage. Every grihasta should hear this and think about it very seriously. Due to this polluted mentality and due to material sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appeared to be bluish. Such an impetus of activity for fruitive result is made possible by the dictation of the external energy of the Lord, Kala. Well, we definitely don't want to be under the influence of Kala. And another meaning of Kala Shakti is avidya, ignorance, or tamas. So as long as we are acting in the level of tamas, we're not going to be free from the cycle of birth and death. Okay, so I want to discuss something very important related to this, and that is, we've been talking a lot about the difference between the Mayavad philosophy and Krishna consciousness. So I want to go much deeper into this question. If we look at the Adi Lila chapter 7, verse 121, which says, Vyasira sutrate kahe parinama vada, Vyasa branta balitara utaila vivada. So it's a very nice mixture of Sanskrit and, well, this is Sanskrit, yeah. So it says, in his Vedanta Sutra, Srila Vyasadeva has described that everything is but a transformation of the energy of the Lord. Sankaracharya, however, has misled the world by commenting that Vyasadeva was mistaken. Thus, he has raised great opposition to theism throughout the entire world. Theism means belief in God. So what has he done by challenging or accusing Vyasadeva of making mistakes? He has raised great opposition to belief in God throughout the entire world. Amen. It's a fact. It's still going on now. Right? So now we're going to study all the deviations that Sankaracharya has propounded in his Sarirak Bhasya, or commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, and how he takes concepts that are true and skews them to make it look as if they're not true. That's how clever he is. So the Mayavadis use the same words that the devotees do, or the Vaishnavas do, but they give false meanings, and they divert people's attention from belief in God to becoming basically atheists. What is an atheist? Someone who doesn't believe God is a person. That's an atheist. Right? So that's what Sankara has done. And he's done it in a very, very subtle way by using word jugglery. That means that he'll take words and juggle them to give different meanings than what they're meant to be. So, in this purport, it says, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in the Vedanta Sutra of Srila Vyasadeva, it is definitely stated that all cosmic manifestations result from transformations of various energies of the Lord. Sankaracharya, however, not accepting the energy of the Lord, thinks that it is the Lord who is transformed. He has taken many clear statements from the Vedic literature and twisted them to try to prove that if the Lord or the Absolute Truth were transformed, his oneness would be disturbed. Thus, he has accused Srila Vyasadeva of being mistaken in developing his philosophy of monism. Therefore, he has established Vivartavada, or the Mayavada theory of illusion. So, here we have this word, Vivartavada. There's a real meaning to this word, and there's a false meaning to this word or this phrase that Sankaracharya has developed by word jugglery. And why is he doing it? Because he wants to show that Vyasadeva made a mistake. This is blasphemous. But yet, people, because they're so ignorant, they accept it. They accept this Mayavad philosophy because of ignorance. So now let's see how Sankaracharya has done this. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, verse number 121. In the Brahma Samhita, second chapter, the first aphorism is as follows. Tad ananyatvam arambana sabdadibhya. Commenting on this sutra, in the Sarirag Bhashya, Sankaracharya has introduced the statement Vacharambanam vikaro namadyayam from the Chandogya Upanishad 6.1.4 to try to prove that acceptance of the transformation of the energy of the Supreme Lord is faulty, is wrong. Now, let's see what is this whole thing hinges on the statement of Vyasadeva that's saying that Krishna has multiple energies. He doesn't just have one. He's got many different energies and sub-energies. So the three main categories are his internal energy, which is Satchitananda Vigraha, eternity, bliss, and absolute knowledge, and but in with eternal form, in the form of Krishna, and all liberated living beings in the spiritual world. So, and then he has his marginal energy, which are all the jivas, you and me. And then he has the external energy, which is the material energy, the material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. So he has multiple energies, and there's subtitles of those energies also. So it's a vast subject matter. Sankaracharya is trying to prove that this is all false. And there's no such thing as transformation of the Lord's energies for the creation and maintenance and sustenance of the material world and the maintenance of the spiritual world. Okay, so now how does he do it? He creates the Mayavad theory of illusion. Now, the Vaishnava theory of illusion is different than the Mayavad theory of illusion. What is the Vaishnava theory of illusion? Well, let's study what the Mayavad theory of illusion is first. In order to establish Mayavad philosophy, Sankaracharya has to prove that the material world is an illusion, it does not exist, And the same thing for the jivas. That's the individual souls do not exist. There's only one soul, that's Brahman. And the material world, the whole thing is an illusion. Now this is big time cancel culture. Right? We discussed that yesterday. Oh, last night. So, Vyasadeva says everything is produced by a transformation of different energies that the Lord has. What's an example of transformation of energy? Well, let's say you have a lemon tree. So a lemon tree has roots, has a trunk, has branches, has leaves, has flowers that develop into lemons. So a lemon is transformation of the energy of the lemon tree. That's an example of transformation. And you plant a seed, and out comes a root, and then a sapling, and eventually develops into a trunk, and different branches, and then leaves, and then flowers, and then fruit. And there's also deep root in the earth. So the roots pick up water and nutrients, and then the leaves pick up light energy in the form of sunlight, which they capture by, and then they potentiate, and they connect with the water and the minerals from the earth and the light of the sun, photosynthesis, and they make eventually what's called glucose. And glucose is the nutrient that helps these trees grow tremendously. And also glucose is what happens when we digest food. We end up with glucose, which goes throughout the whole blood system and nourishes all the cells of the body so they can remain healthy and grow. So this is all done in a very wonderful way. And it's all a process of transformation from one thing to another, or transformation of energy. Now, Sankaracharya is going to say there's no such thing as transformation. There's only one thing that's Brahman. If it transforms, then its oneness is broken. Therefore, he rejects the theory of transformation and says that Vyasadeva made a mistake. Now, how does he do that exactly? So now we're going to hear how he does it. In the Brahma Sutra, second chapter, the first aphorism is as follows: Tad ananyatvam aramban sabdadibhyaha. Commenting on this sutra, in his Sarirag Bhashya, that's his Sarirag Bhashya, is his commentary or his misinterpretation of the Vedanta Sutra originally written by Vyasadeva. Right? So he's taking this wonderful Bhashya of Vyasadeva and he's skewing it, he's screwing it up with false, let's say, narratives. So he says, in his Sarirag Bhashya, Sankaracharya has introduced the statement Vacharambanam Vikaro Namadhyayam from the Chandogya Upanishad 6.1.4 to try and prove that acceptance of the transformation of the energy of the Supreme Lord is faulty, is false, basically. He has tried to defy this transformation of energy in a misguided way, which will be explained later. Well, we're going to get to that. Since his conception of God is impersonal, he does not believe that the entire cosmic manifestation is a transformation of the energies of the Lord. For as soon as one accepts the various energies of the Absolute Truth, one must immediately accept the Absolute Truth to be personal, not impersonal. A person can create many things by the transformation of his energy. For example, a businessman transforms transforms his energy by establishing many big factories or business organizations. Yet he remains a person, although his energy has been transformed into the many factories or business concerns. The Mayavadi philosophers do not understand this simple fact. Their tiny brains and poor fund of knowledge cannot afford them sufficient enlightenment to realize that when a man's energy is transformed, the man himself is not transformed, but remains the same person. See? Very nice statement in Prabhupada's purport. Now, let me go back a little bit to find out why Sankara is so hell-bent on creating the Mayavad philosophy. He was ordered by Narayana to kick out the Buddhists from India, or at least neutralize their influence, and reestablish the authority of the Vedas. Now, how did he do this? Well, we're going to go over that very quickly, because even Sankara himself said that his philosophy would only be valid for 1,000 years. So that's like from 500 years before the birth of Christ to about 500 years after the birth of Christ, right? So that's 500 and 500, that's 1,000 years. Okay, so therefore, he had the very hard task of trying to convince the Buddhists to give up their understanding that the Vedas are bogus and reestablish the authority of the Vedas. Now, why did Buddha say, or why did he reject the authority of the Vedas? Not because there's something wrong with the Vedas, it's because the Brahmanas, after the start of Kali Yuga, deviated and used Vedic, let's say, Vedic knowledge to kill cows and claim that their meat was prasad. And this is what actually happened. The Jews did that, and the Brahmanas in India did that. Because in Kali Yuga, it's forbidden to perform animal sacrifice. But the Jews continued doing it, and others, not only the Jews, and the Brahmanas in India continued doing it. So, and because they were, why was it forbidden? Because the Brahmanas in the Kali Yuga are not qualified, like the Brahmanas previously, to say the Vedic mantras. So therefore, when they insert a living cow into the fire, holding onto the tail and saying certain mantras, when they pull it out of the fire, it's not rejuvenated into a young calf. It becomes a barbecue. And to cover the mud on their face for the incorrect saying of the mantras, they claimed that it was prasad. So in the name of animal slaughter, in the name of religion, they were slaughtering cows and saying you can eat the meat. So, to stop that, and Buddha came and said, if this is the way you follow the Vedas, then I reject the Vedas. So now for 1,000 years, Buddhism became prominent in India, especially with King Ashoka, who became a bhikshu. He gave up being the king and became a Buddhist monk. And this was like amazing for the people in Bharat. And seeing the purity of the king and also Buddha himself, they converted and rejected the Vedas. Now, fast forward, it says, one may argue, now this is in Adi Lila, chapter 7, verse number 110. One may argue that since Sankaracharya is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, how is it that he cheated people in this way? The answer is that he did so on the order of his master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Padma Purana in the words of Lord Shiva himself, Mayavadam asas chastram prachanam bodham uchyate, and so forth. The Mayavadi philosophy. Lord Shiva informed his wife Parvati, is impious asach shastra. It is covered Buddhism. My dear Parvati, in Kali Yuga I assume the form of a Brahmana and teach this imagined Mayavad philosophy. In order to cheat the atheist, I describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be without form and without qualities. Similarly, in explaining Vedanta, I describe the same Mayavad philosophy in order to mislead the entire population toward atheism by denying the personal form of the Lord. In the Shiva Purana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead told Shiva, Dvaparado yuge bhutva kalaya manusadisu, and so forth. In Kali Yuga, mislead the people in general by propounding imaginary meanings for the Vedas to bewilder them. These are the descriptions of the Puranas. So, he is simply following the order he's received from Krishna to cheat the Buddhists and reestablish the authority of the Vedas. But to do that, he gives a Buddhist interpretation of the Vedas. That's why the Buddhists accepted it, or a lot of them accepted it. Okay. So now we know why Sankaracharya is doing this. So, therefore, Prabhupada says that Sankaracharya is an acharya. Why? Because before he left his body, and he died young, I think he was only 32 years old, he said, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudamate. Look, give up all your word jugglery. He's telling that to his disciples, and just worship Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, they didn't listen to him, and so Mayavadi philosophy continued after it was supposed to end at in 1,000 years. Okay, but the goal of reestablishing the authority of the Vedas was established. That was important. But we have this false interpretation of it, of the Mayavadis, which is still around, and it's very prominent. But the Vaishnavas came in and challenged the Sarirak Bhashya, and it first was Ramanujacharya, then Madhvacharya, then ultimately Lord Chaitanya himself. Okay, so now we come back and take a look at why and how Sankaracharya created this hoax. And you cannot blame him for doing it. He was ordered to do it, right? So, in the so we're reading from Adi Lila, chapter 7, verse 121. And it says here, about the businessman who can create many things, factories, businesses. Look at Jeff Bezos. He's created so many businesses. And Elon Musk also. He doesn't just have Tesla. He's got a whole bunch of other companies, right? And Bill Gates also. You know, they all expand their energies in the form of different businesses and different projects. Okay. So, not believing in the fact that the energy of the Absolute Truth is transformed, Sankaracharya has propounded his theory of illusion. This theory states that although the Absolute Truth is never transformed, we think that it is transformed, which is an illusion. Sankaracharya does not believe in the transformation of the energy of the Absolute Truth, for he claims that everything is one and that the living entity is therefore also one with the Supreme. This is Mayavad theory. So in other words, he's denying the individuality of the jivas. He's denying the existence of the material world. He says it's an illusion, and he says the different jivas are also an illusion. There's only one thing, and that's Brahman. So this is cancel culture on steroids. Cancel culture on steroids. He's canceling all the jivas. He's canceling the whole material creation. Right? He's canceling, as I've said before, Vaikuntha. He's canceling Goloka. He's canceling Krishna. He's canceling all the liberated souls in the Vaikuntha planets. And he's shrinking down reality to one thing, that's Brahman. And that's impersonal. Right? So you can see how restrictive Mayavad philosophy is. And you heard that lady yesterday, right? We played the tape of the Brahma Kumari lady. She says clearly, Krishna is only a symbol. Huh? He's only a symbol. He's not actually a person, right? So this is Mayavad philosophy. Right? So then it says, Srila Vyasadeva has explained that the absolute truth is a person who has different potencies, merely by his desire that there be creation, and by his glance, sa aikshata, he created this material world, sa asrijata. After creation, he remains the same person. He is not transformed into everything. One should accept that the Lord has inconceivable energies, and that it is by his order and will that varieties of manifestations have come into existence. Well, Sankaracharya rejects that. He says, no, there's no such thing. There's only one thing, that's Brahman, and therefore his philosophy is summarized as Kevala Advaita, absolute oneness. There's nothing else. He's going to reject everything and just limit you to being a non-person that merges into this big soup called Brahman. Yeah.
So if they are saying that they are merged, that means they are...
They're what? They're saying what?
They are saying that they merge into Brahman.
Merge. Yes.
Merge, right?
Yeah.
So that itself says that there are two different things, right? How come one merge without...
No, they say that the individuality is an illusion. It doesn't really exist. They don't say it's real. They say it's an illusion.
But then what? How come this merge?
Because when you give up the illusion, you go back. Well, okay, they give examples. Now, this is what I'm going to lecture on today. The examples that they give. So one example is that when there's a air in the water, so it's like a bubble, and it's coming up toward the surface of the water. And as soon as it touches the surface of the water, it bursts and becomes one with the air. That's one example they give, right? Merging into oneness. And and actually, that little bit of air that's trapped in the water, they claim is an illusion. And the fact it's an illusion is that it disappears into the oneness. And another example they give is Gatakas Patakas. Now, what is Gatakas Patakas? That is the idea that there's a round water, a clay water bottle, right? A round thing with a little spigot, right? So, in underwater, or it can be in water, or it can be on land. So there's air inside that pot, and there's air outside the pot. You break the pot, it all merges into one. That's called Gatakas Patakas. Now, I'm going to read something to you. This is from the 6th chapter, 6th canto, 4th chapter, 34th verse. As the air carries various characteristics of the physical elements, like the aroma of a flower or colors resulting from a mixture of dust in the air, the Lord appears through lower systems of worship according to one's desires, although he appears as the demigods and not in his original form. What is the use of these other forms? May the original Supreme Personality of Godhead please fulfill my desires. Okay, now I'm going to read the purport because it explains this, the false theory of Gatakas Patakas, and then the real understanding of Gatakas Patakas. So, Prabhupada writes, the impersonalists imagine the various demigods to be forms of the Lord. For example, the Mayavadis worship 5 gods, Panchopasana. They do not actually believe in the form of the Lord, but for the sake of worship, they imagine some form to be God. Generally, they imagine a form of Vishnu, a form of Shiva, a form of Ganesha, the sun god Surya, and Durga. These are the 5 deities, or Panchapasana, that they worship in traditional Hindu temples. Right? That was established by Sankaracharya. They do not actually believe in the form of the Lord. Okay. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes the difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and an ordinary living being. As pointed out, so now this is a bona fide Vaishnava authority, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti. As pointed out in the previous verse, Sarvam Pumam Veda Gunams Chataj Jino Na Veda Sarva Jnanam Anantam Ide. The omnipotent Supreme Lord knows everything, but the living being does not actually know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I know everything, but no one knows me. This is the difference between the Supreme Lord and an ordinary living being. In a prayer in Srimad Bhagavatam, Queen Kunti says, my dear Lord, you exist inside and outside, yet no one can see you. The conditioned soul cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by speculative knowledge or by imagination. That's what Sankaracharya is trying to do. One must therefore know the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He reveals himself, but he cannot be understood by speculation. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Atapi te deva padam buja dvaya prasada lesana grihita evahi. Janati tatvam bhagavan mahimno nachanya eko pichiram vichinvan. My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many, many years. Okay? This is the verdict of the Shastra. An ordinary man may be a great philosopher and may speculate upon what the absolute truth is, what his form is, and where he is existing, but he cannot understand these truths. Sevan muke hi jiva ado, swayam eva spurat yada. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead only through devotional service. This is also explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself in Bhagavad Gita 18:55, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yamanyas jasmitatvata. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is only by devotional service. Unintelligent persons want to imagine or concoct a form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but devotees want to worship the actual personality of Godhead. Therefore, Daksha prays, one may think of you as personal, impersonal, or imaginary, but I wish to pray to your Lordship that you fulfill my desires to see you as you actually are. And that's Daksha. Srila, that's probably after he got his head cut off and got a donkey head. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that this verse is especially meant for the impersonalists, who think that he himself is the Supreme, because there's no difference between a living being and God. The Mayavadi philosopher thinks that there's only one Supreme Truth, and that he is also that Supreme Truth. Actually, this is not knowledge, but foolishness. And this verse is especially meant for such fools, whose knowledge has been stolen by illusion, maya aprita jnana. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that such persons, jnani manina, think themselves very advanced, but actually they are unintelligent. In regard to this verse, Srila Madhvacharya says, Swadehastam harim prabhur adama jivam evatu, and so forth. There are three classes of men: the lowest, adama; those in the middle, madhyama; and the best, uttama. The lowest, adama, think that there is no difference between God and the living entity, except that the living entity is under designations, whereas the absolute truth has no designations, in their opinion. As soon as the designations of the material body are dissolved, the jiva, the living entity, will mix with the Supreme. They give the argument of gatakas pratakas, in which the body is compared to a pot with the sky within and the sky without. When the pot breaks, the sky inside becomes one with the sky outside. And so the impersonalists say that the living being becomes one with the Supreme. This is their argument. But Sri Madhvacharya says that such an argument is put forward by the lowest class of men. Ooh, the Mayavadi, therefore, the lowest class of men. Another class of men cannot ascertain what the actual form of the Supreme is, but they agree that there is a Supreme who controls the activities of the ordinary living being. Such philosophers are accepted as mediocre. The best, however, are those who understand the Supreme Lord, Satchitananda Vigraha, Brahma Samhita 5.1. Purna Nandadi Gunakam Sarva Jiva Vilakshanam. His form is completely spiritual, full of bliss, and completely distinct from that of the conditioned soul or any other living entity. Utamastu Harim Prabhus Tarat Tam Yena Tesucha. Such philosophers are the best because they know that the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself differently to worshippers in various modes of material nature. They know that there are 33 million demigods. Just to convince the conditioned soul that there is a supreme power and to induce him to agree to worship one of these demigods, so that by the association of devotees he may be able to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mata parataram nanya kinchit asti dhananjaya, Bhagavad Gita 7.7. There is no truth superior to me. Aham adir hi devanam. I am the origin of all the demigods. Aham sarvasra prabhava. I am superior to everyone, even Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods. These are the conclusions of the Shastra, and one who accepts these conclusions should be considered a first-class philosopher. Such a philosopher knows that the Supreme Personality of God is the Lord of the demigods, Deva Deveshwaram Sutram Anadam Prana Vedita. Now, what does he say here? They know that there are 33 million demigods, just to convince the conditioned soul that there is a supreme power and to induce him to agree to worship one of these demigods, so that by the association of devotees he may be able to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, the demigods are all the servants of Krishna. Now, it depends how you approach the demigod. If you approach the demigod for material benefits, then the demigod misleads you by giving them to you, but then another demigod, Durga, takes it away from you and devastates you to teach you that you want the wrong thing. And the other way of approaching the demigods is to understand that demigods are the servants of Krishna, and if you ask them to help you understand Krishna, they'll do that. Just like the gopis, in order to have Krishna as their husband, they prayed to Katyayani, a form of Durga, to please help them have Krishna as their lover or husband. And they got that. So the devas can go both ways. You approach the deva for material benefit, they will, to some degree, give you some material benefits, but then another deva will come and take them away from you. Right? So what good is it? It's no good. But it's to teach you that you want the wrong thing. You're going to lose everything they give you because everything belongs to Krishna. It doesn't belong to us. So eventually, out of frustration, after many, many lifetimes, birth and death, bahunam janmanam ante jnanamam mam prapadyante vasudeva saramiti samahatma sudurlabha. One may become a Mahatma after many, many lifetimes of speculation, of a little bit of success, and a lot of failure, and going through different bodies and different and spending eons, millions of years in different bodies. You may come back again to the human form of life and then finally smarten up and say, wait a minute, I've been making the same mistake every time I'm born. I think that the purpose of life is sense gratification. Now I understand it's not. The purpose of life is to go back to Godhead, where I came from. So, but it takes to become enlightened completely, just by coming to class on a regular basis and hearing Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion. You will be enlightened. So, therefore, we see here that there's two ways of approaching the demigods. One is for material benefits, which is actually a curse, and it will be taken away from you anyway. Or the other way is, please help me have Krishna as my eternal savior. Then the demigods will help you, because they are servants of Krishna. Okay, so there is bona fide demigod worship and unbona fide demigod worship. So, if you worship like the gopis, you worship a demigod to help you come closer to Krishna, that'll happen. But if you worship a demigod for material benefit, then you get cheated, thinking, oh, I got the benefit, but actually you're getting a whole new series of suffering. Okay, so if we come back now, what time is it now? 7:20. Okay, so we'll stop right there and we'll continue this tomorrow. We're going to understand now all the same concepts, like Patakas, Gatakas, Patakas. The Mayavad understanding of that is nonsense. But there's a correct understanding of that Prabhupada explains in the third canto, in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're going to go one by one. All these false interpretations of the Mayavadis and the correct interpretation, because they use the same words, Gatakas, Pratakas, or they use the word Vichari, or they use the word Parinama, or they use the word anyway, they use the same words and they use the same verses, but they give the wrong interpretation. So I'm going to point out all these so-called verses and words that they're misinterpreting and give the right, correct interpretation. When you understand this, then you won't be fooled. But when you don't understand this, you'll see, look, they're talking about Gatakas, Patakas, but they're giving a wrong interpretation of it. How will you know that? Unless it's pointed out what is the wrong thing and what is the right thing. So we're going to go through a long list of these wrong things and the right understanding of them. Right. Okay, are there any questions?
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj, one more thing actually I don't understand, that Mayavadi...
Only one thing you don't understand?
Yeah, means one more I said. So, as we say that, like Shankaracharya tried to establish Vedas, right? So, because people deviated...
He established the authority of the Vedas.
Vedas, yeah.
But he gave a Buddhist interpretation of it.
So how he's trying to do that by denying God, Krishna God? I mean,
no, he's not denying God. He's limiting you only to the Brahman realization. But there's Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. He's canceling Paramatma and Bhagavan. It's just giving you. He's putting you in a prison, basically. In a prison, by the way, where there's no devotional service. There's no devotional service in Brahman realization. Therefore, you are destined to fall down. You cannot maintain the position in Brahman believing that by not engaging in devotional service. It's the only place where there's no devotional service. There's devotional service in the material world, even in hell, right? And in the middle planets like this, and in the higher planets also. There's devotional service in Vaikuntha and Goloka. There's only one place where there's no devotional service, that's the Brahman effulgence.
So are we indirectly saying that Vedas has no devotional service because it's trying to establish Vedas?
No, the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita is part of the Vedas, right? Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking about devotional service. But they juggle the words, even devotional service, to make it look like it's either non-existent or it's just meditation. You understand? So when you meditate on what? On the light, you're not meditating. You're meditating on an aspect of Krishna called Brahma Jyoti, but there is no devotional service there. So they're basically delivering you into a dead end, and that's why you'll fall down. Because you're a person, you can't deny your personality eternally. Eventually you'll have one little desire and you fall down.
Vedas are pointing to one truth. I mean, based on what I understood, Maharaj, is like Vedas are vast, but at the base of it, it's covering a lot of materialism.
No,
and then
Vedas are aimed at one truth, that is Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God.
Correct. So it's like a triangle, but at the top of the peak, one should come to the conclusion that there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead from which everything emanated. In fact, that's why Srila Vyasadeva has finally composed Srimad Bhagavatam,
Yes.
which is the summum bonum of everything. But that's why Shankaracharya has not...
Everything that exists can be used in the service of the Lord.
Correct.
That is bhakti. Learning how to use everything in the service of the Lord.
But Shankaracharya did not, they reject Srimad Bhagavatam.
No, Shankaracharya is rejecting everything.
Yeah.
And saying there's only one thing, that's Brahman realization.
So that means they cut off the
They
most
cut
important.
off everything. Top and the bottom. The material energy belongs to Krishna. So you should use it only in Krishna's service. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. A small correction regarding the word fruitive. I searched it again. It's not there in the Oxford Dictionary.
It's not there where?
It's not there in Oxford Dictionary.
Yeah, the Oxford. No, because they don't accept that word. See,
Right.
they have a committee that will accept words in the dictionary. They don't accept that word because it's not an English word.
Yeah. There is a word called fruitful, but
Yeah.
it's a different word. Yeah.
Prabhupada coined the word fruitive, and it's in the American, Merriam-Webster dictionary. No, that's why I said look up in the Oxford Dictionary. See, there are a lot of differences like that between English and American English. Many, many differences.
And one more thing regarding the Buddhist philosophy, it's surprising to know they had problem with killing of animals for God, but today many Buddhists actually eat meat, including monks, including even Dalai Lama.
Yeah, they've deviated from ahimsa parama. Ahimsa is the highest principle of Dharma. Ahimsa parama Dharma.
It's surprising to know even Dalai Lama eats meat.
Of course.
who is highest, who they regarded as a highest spiritual leader. Okay.
Yeah, he's a nonsense. Well, no, they rationalize it by saying when the Dalai Lama eats meat, the soul of that animal goes quicker to the human form of life.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over all these so-called words that the Mayavadis misinterpret and show the real meanings of those words. But they're the same words. So it's very easy for people to get confused by reading Mayavad philosophy. They're going to use the same words like parinama and these other words, and gatakas, patakas, and things like that. The same examples, mistaking a snake to be a rope or a rope for a snake. They use the same example, but they misuse it. So when you start to understand the misuse of all these vital words and phrases, then you see how dangerous Mayavad philosophy is. And that's why people are confused. Go ahead.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in some time back you read another Prabhupada lecture. In that also we heard about Gatakas and Patakas.
Okay.
Shall I read just? It's a small
go
paragraph.
ahead, go ahead.
So Prabhupada says, this is also another doubt, because the impersonalists, they think Gatakas and Patakas, just like the sky within the pot and the sky is outside the pot. So when the pot is broken, the inside sky becomes one with the outside sky. That is their theory. So these doubts are also dissipated when one comes to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, I was going to read this quote tomorrow, but go ahead. This is a second canto, right?
Yes, yeah. It is 1.2.21.
Yes, right. I was going to quote that tomorrow.
Some time back you read this lecture,
Yeah,
Maharaj.
we read it.
Yeah.
He's giving the right Prabhupada's giving the right interpretation of Gatakas, Patakas. Go ahead.
The Gatakas, the sky within the pot, it cannot be made analogy with the sky in the pot and outside, because they are individual souls. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that they are part and parcel of God, Sanatana, eternally, not that they have been cut off. Just like the sky within the pot is walled by the wall of the pot, but actually we are not walled. We are individual. Every one of us are individual.
Okay, so now, see, what he's saying basically is anytime there's an analogy, when you're comparing two things, the analogy is only valid by the number of points of similarity. So there's no point of similarity of individuality in the pot and in the air, right? The soul is a person, so comparing it to the air in the pot and the air in the great sky, there's no analogy there. So what the Mayavadis are doing, they're saying, oh no, it looks like there's an individual air in the pot, right? But when you break the pot, it merges into the totality of the air. But the air in the pot is not a person. So you can't say that the jiva becomes paramatma. That's what they're trying to prove. Jiva becomes paramatma. As soon as the jiva gives up its identification, it'll become paramatma. But the jiva is a person. It's not an it. It's not like empty. It's not like air in a pot, right? So there's no similarity between the air in the pot and the air outside. So you cannot compare that to a jiva.
Yes, just two more lines. Actually, we are individual, and therefore, because we are individual, according to our individual karma, we have got different types of body. So these are the doubts. When one becomes completely, cognizant with the Krishna consciousness science, his all doubts are removed.
Yeah, see, the air in the pot does not have karma. It does not have individuality. So there's no points of similarity between the air in the pot and the jiva. So and this is what they do. they falsely make analogies and try to prove their point by jugglery of words. Okay. Online question?
There's no name. I don't know who asked this.
That's right.
How devotional service in hell possible?
Because sometimes Narada Muni goes to hell. He can go anywhere. And he teaches people to chant Hare Krishna. So, we go to hell also when we go out for Sankirtan, downtown Seattle. Try and teach people who are complete animals to chant Hare Krishna and have prasadam. We feed homeless people. That's hell also, right? Trying to teach them to chant Hare Krishna. Yeah, you can become Krishna conscious even in hell, because someone like Narada Muni will come there every once in a while, right? And spread Krishna consciousness. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I'm glad you read that. But you have to understand, an analogy is only valid by the points of similarity. So if you're comparing air in a pot to a jiva, it's no comparison. There's no similarities between the two. So it's a fake analogy. This is what the Mayavadis do. And we're going to go through all these fake analogies that they make. Okay? And people get fooled because they don't understand. They're not educated. So when you know nothing, you can believe anything. And Hindus know nothing about their own religion. That's why they convert so easily to atheism or Mayavad or Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or whatever. Haribol. And when they do study philosophy, it's Mayavad philosophy. So the Hindus have been cursed. There's a curse there. You know, that's why Prabhupada's mission is to destroy Mayavad and Sunyavad philosophy. That's why he came to the West. You destroy it in the West, see, everybody follows what happens in America. So you destroy it in America, then the Hindus will understand. See? They'll say, oh, what? They're following Hare Krishna? Maybe we missed something in our culture.
केवल भक्ति सद्मा बन्नमोहि सावधान नाते जहर प्रसादे बाई ए भवतोरे कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जय होते गुरु क्या चित्त कोरिया क्या चरणे रवि ऐसे उत्तम गति जे प्रसाद पूरे सर्व चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य गाएंगे में प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदिक जहर चरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आज मदनर बंधु लोके ना लोके राजीवाना हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद चय प्रभु करो दया भज गुषुप त्रिभुवाना प्रभु तप तपवाना जय प्रभु पद जय प्रभु पद जय प्रभु पद जय प्रभु पद जय गुरुदेव जय गुरुदेव जय गुरुदेव जय गुरुदेव नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी नित्यानंद नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्यता विषतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridasa Thakur ki jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Mayapura Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Bol, all glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Devi Sesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Gaura Premanandi Hari. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to His lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By His grace, across the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From Him, ecstatic prema emanates. By Him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.